This episode is based on the case of Caylee Anthony. You want to hear something genuinely disturbing? You know, there are certain cases where people become almost more disturbed and obsessed by somebody's behavior afterward than the crime itself. And apparently that's exactly what happened with Caylee Anthony. The deeper I got into this story, the stranger the emotional atmosphere around it started feeling. Not loud, not chaotic, just off. So this case revolves around Caylee Anthony and her daughter, Caylee. At first, people didn't even realize Caylee was missing, which already sounds bizarre when you say it out loud. According to the investigators, weeks had apparently gone by before Caylee was officially reported missing. Once people found that out, the entire situation immediately started feeling disturbing. But then the investigators kept unfolding, and somehow things kept becoming stranger. While investigators and family members were trying to figure out where Caylee was, Caylee was apparently still going out, socializing, partying, living very normally from the outside looking in. And because people became obsessed with that detail, not because there's one correct way to react emotionally, but because something about the emotional disconnect felt deeply unsettling to the people watching it unfold. It's hard to explain. Your brain almost keeps waiting for the emotional reality of the situation to finally appear somewhere, and it just doesn't seem to here. And then there were the lies. Apparently, Caylee kept giving investigators different explanations about where she worked, where she had been, who she talked to. At one point, she even led investigators through an entire building, pretending she had a job there, before eventually admitting she didn't actually work there at all. That part honestly just stuck out to me because that's such a strange level of reality construction. It's not one panicked lie, not one impulsive excuse. An entire moving version of reality being created in real time. That's what Caylee was doing. And the more I read about this case, the less it started feeling like somebody trying to convince other people, and the more it felt like somebody trying to emotionally outrun reality itself. That's what makes this story feel psychologically eerie to me, because eventually the lies stop sounding strategic. They just start sounding automatic, like reality itself has become something the person can't emotionally tolerate facing directly anymore. One thing that made this case so culturally obsessive was the fact that people couldn't emotionally read Caylee the way they expected to. People kept searching for her behavior to be panicked, to have guilt, to show grief, fear, something. But emotionally, her reactions often seemed disconnected from what people expected to see. Human beings rely heavily on emotional signals to decide whether somebody feels safe, trustworthy, or believable. So when somebody's emotional presentation feels mismatched to the situation, it creates this really deep psychological discomfort. Almost like your instincts keep trying to warn you that something isn't lining up correctly. Eventually, Caylee Anthony's remains were discovered near her family home, and Caylee Anthony was charged with murder. The trial exploded across the country because people became emotionally consumed by trying to understand her, not just whether she was guilty, what kind of person she actually was underneath everything people had watched publicly. Honestly, I don't think people ever fully felt like they figured that part out. That's probably why this case stayed in people's heads for so long afterwards, because stories like this force people to confront something uncomfortable about human behavior. Sometimes emotional normalcy can be performed. Sometimes people continue smiling, talking, joking, functioning, while something deeply wrong exists underneath the surface. And that possibility unsettles people more than they want to admit. And I'm curious what you think about this. Do you think most people are actually good at recognizing emotional deception? Or do you think human beings are much easier to emotionally fool than we realize?